February 19, 1994. Riverside General Hospital, California. 8:15 p.m. It started as a routine emergency. A call came in. Gloria Ramirez, 31 years old, was en route via ambulance. Diagnosed with late-stage cervical cancer. She was disoriented, confused, and her heart rate was dangerously high. Doctors suspected it was a complication from her illness. But no one, not even in their worst nightmares, was prepared for what came through the doors. 8:20 p.m. Gloria arrived in critical condition. She was awake but struggling to speak. Her breaths were short and panicked. Nurse Susan Kane and resident Dr. Julie Gorczynski began treating her immediately. And then they noticed something wrong. Her body had an oily sheen. Her breath smelled not like a sick patient but like garlic and ammonia. Her skin was unusually sticky, and her heart wasn't responding to medication. As Nurse Kane inserted in 4, she caught a whiff of something even more unnatural. A sweet, chemical smell like fruit and metal but sharp. It made my throat burn. 8:32 p.m. They drew blood. And that's when things turned from strange to terrifying. The syringe filled with brownish blood. Floating in it were small, white crystals like grains of sand suspended in plasma. It didn't look like blood anymore, one nurse later said. It looked processed, like it had been changed. Then Nurse Kane collapsed. 8:34 p.m. More staff arrived to assist. One by one, they began to lose consciousness. Dr. Gorczynski stumbled away from the bed and vomited. Within moments, she was on the floor, her limbs locking up, her body shaking. Other staff reported dizziness, disorientation, and blackouts. A code orange was declared hazmat emergency. Gloria was still alive, but she was now being treated by staff in full protective gear, standing under fans, trying to ventilate the trauma room. 8:50 p.m. Despite efforts to stabilize her, Gloria Ramirez went into cardiac arrest. CPR was administered with caution, using long tools and gloves. She was pronounced dead at 8:50 p.m. Her body was quickly sealed in a biohazard bag and transported to an isolation chamber. But the damage was done. In total, 23 hospital workers became symptomatic. 5 were hospitalized. 1, Dr. Gorczynski, spent 2 weeks in intensive care, suffering from apnea, hepatitis, and avascular necrosis in her knees, tissue death caused by lack of blood. Nothing like this had ever happened before. Initial theories were vague and increasingly desperate. Some suspected toxic fumes from chemotherapy drugs. Others blamed organophosphates, chemicals used in pesticides. One doctor suggested a bizarre condition called mass hysteria, but the staff pushed back. I couldn't breathe. I wasn't afraid. I was physically shutting down. Dr. Gorczynski. Gloria's family was devastated and furious. They were told she died of cancer complications. But the whispers were everywhere. Why did everyone who treated her collapse? What were the crystals in her blood? Why did her body shut down an entire ER? The county coroner ordered a full autopsy, but it couldn't be performed for over a week. Why? Because no one wanted to be in the room with her body. It was sealed in an airtight, lead-lined room. The technicians entered in full hazmat suits, watched remotely via camera, and still reported nausea, headaches, and vertigo. The official findings? Cause of death, kidney failure due to cancer. No abnormal toxins detected. No clear explanation for the mass medical incident. But that didn't satisfy anyone. A second private autopsy was commissioned by the family. And what they found only deepened the mystery. Her body showed signs of DMSO dimethyl sulfoxide, a compound used in degreasing and alternative pain relief. It had once been marketed as a miracle cure before being pulled due to side effects. But in high doses or under certain conditions, it could break down into dimethyl sulfate, a toxic, nerve-damaging gas. Had something in Gloria's body converted it? Had she been trying to self-treat her cancer? Had her body turned into a chemical weapon? Even now, the debate continues. Doctors, toxicologists, skeptics, believers, but everyone agrees on one thing. No one who walked into that room expected to collapse. No one expected the blood to shimmer. And no one can explain why she died and took an entire ER with her. February 20th, 1994, the morning after. Riverside General Hospital looked like a biohazard war zone. The trauma room where Gloria Ramirez had been treated was sealed off. Industrial fans had been brought in to air it out. Every staff member who entered the room had to sign a waiver and wear protective gear. And still, people got sick. But Gloria's body, it lay completely still. And it was about to start a second wave of fear. 11 a.m. Riverside Coroner's Office. Chief Deputy Coroner Dan Cupido watched the body be wheeled into a special containment room. It had been chilled, sealed in multiple layers of protective wrapping. But when they opened the first layer, the ammonia smell hit them like a wall. Everyone paused. They had never smelled anything like it before. Not rot, not blood, not chemicals they recognized. Cupido ordered the room cleared and called the hazmat team again. Meanwhile, across town, toxicologists were already pulling medical records and blood samples. One compound came up again and again, DMSO, dimethyl sulfoxide, a once-hyped industrial solvent turned medical cure-all. In the 1960s, DMSO was sold as a miracle anti-inflammatory and pain reliever. Athletes swore by it. So did cancer patients, especially those who'd run out of options. The only problem? It was pulled from human use due to toxicity concerns and banned for over-the-counter sales. But you could still find it in hardware stores, sold as a degreaser. Investigators believed Gloria had been using DMSO gel on her skin to self-medicate. Her family confirmed she'd tried alternative treatments. She was desperate. She was dying. But that alone couldn't explain what happened, or what was found in her blood. Because when the team analyzed her samples, they didn't just find DMSO, they found dimethyl sulfate. And that's where things get terrifying. Dimethyl sulfate is not just toxic. It's classified as a chemical warfare agent by the CDC. Exposure can cause seizures, paralysis, and death. It's absorbed through the skin and lungs. And worst of all, it's nearly undetectable after exposure. In Gloria's body, it should have broken down quickly. But it was still present enough to poison an entire ER team. The question was, how the hell did it get there? One theory emerged, that under hospital conditions, high oxygen levels, electric shocks from defibrillators, and adrenaline, DMSO could have transformed inside her. She was essentially turned into a toxic gas bomb, her body chemistry weaponized by the emergency treatment itself. But that still didn't explain everything. Why did only some people get sick? Why did the crystals appear in her blood? And why did her body continue releasing toxins even after death? March 2, 1994, the second autopsy. Her family wasn't satisfied with the official results. They hired an independent pathologist. The body had now been sealed for over 10 days. Still frozen. Still wrapped. When the new team opened the containment layers, they reported a strong chemical vapor burning their eyes and throat. Even in death, Gloria was emitting something toxic. Inside, they found something deeply unsettling. Her heart was missing. So were her liver and most major organs. The explanation? They had liquefied during containment due to the chemical breakdown. We had to discard them for safety. But the family didn't believe that. They believed something was being hidden. That maybe her body had been experimented on. That maybe she'd been exposed to something before she ever got to the hospital. Some even whispered she was the experiment. A theory emerged from the fringes. That Gloria had been unknowingly used as a test subject for a chemical or radiation-based treatment. That something was put into her system and reacted when she was shocked. Not a conspiracy. Just a failed trial, one they tried to cover up. Her family claimed she'd had a strange rash weeks before. A neighbor said she'd been visited by a man with a badge offering a new kind of therapy. There were no records. And then something happened that shook everyone again. A forensic assistant working the night shift at the coroner's office began to feel dizzy around 1 a.m. He was alone. He said he heard movement from the containment room. A shuffling. A thump. He radioed it in. When others arrived, they found him pale, sweating, vomiting in the hallway. He said, "I swear to God, she was breathing." No security footage showed anything. But the tape from the air pressure sensor inside the chamber did spike for 12 seconds. Something moved inside the sealed room. They moved her to a military-grade biofreezer. And no one ever touched the body again. March 1994, Riverside General Hospital. 3 weeks had passed since the incident. The public wanted answers. The press was circling. And inside the hospital, staff were getting quiet. Administrators issued internal memos urging all personnel not to speak to reporters. Those who did, even anonymously, reported being pulled from shifts, reassigned, or given unpaid leave. One nurse later stated off the record, "They didn't want us to call it an outbreak. They wanted us to call it an accident, even though we all felt the same thing. That whatever Gloria had, it got out." Dr. Julie Gorchinsky, who'd suffered the most severe symptoms, refused to accept the mass hysteria theory. You don't fake organ damage. You don't faint from shared anxiety and end up with dead bone tissue in your legs. Something physically, chemically hit us. That's not psychology. That's exposure. She was transferred to administrative duty for months. March 15th, a second incident occurred. Inside the Riverside morgue, where Gloria's remains were being stored, 2 technicians entered to check internal air pressure sensors. They were inside less than 5 minutes. Both collapsed. Symptoms: nausea, memory confusion. One lost consciousness for 30 minutes. A third technician, who never entered the room, began vomiting while standing 10 feet from the door. This was 3 weeks after Gloria's death. Her body had been kept at minus 30 degrees Celsius, still sealed in layers of chemical wraps. But something was still leaking, and no one knew what it was. Emergency services recommended a full chemical sweep of the facility. The morgue was closed for 10 days. All autopsies suspended. When reopened, new air filtration systems had been installed. But Gloria's body was never moved again. Even the staff referred to it as the box. Meanwhile, journalists kept digging. A local reporter, Maria Ortega, uncovered disturbing inconsistencies in the coroner's reports. Dates didn't match. Chain of custody records for Gloria's tissue samples had missing signatures. Toxicology forms were stamped incomplete, yet had been used to issue a cause of death. Ortega confronted a county official. He told her flatly, "Don't chase this. You're looking for answers in the wrong decade." That same night, someone broke into her apartment. Nothing was stolen, but her notes were gone. All of them. Theories multiplied online. That Gloria had been used in an illegal drug trial. That she was exposed to a classified nerve agent. That a mutated form of DMSO had created a new kind of chemical contagion, one that lived in her blood and vaporized through her skin. Some suggested her cancer was never the real issue. That it had been a cover condition to monitor her response to something else. An old-school experiment. A Black Ops medical test. One Reddit user later posted, "Check US patent hashtag for 172896. It's for an injectable compound that mimics DMSO under stress. Look at who owns the rights." It was registered to a defense contractor. Back at the hospital, staff began quitting quietly. One custodian, who'd worked in Trauma Room 1 for 14 years, left with no notice. His note? "Her blood smelled like burning metal, but it's her silence that still hurts my ears." That phrase came up again. Silence that hurts. A second nurse who had helped clean the trauma room reported sudden ear pain and auditory hallucinations in the weeks after the event. She described it as a hiss that's not a sound but a feeling, like something whispering just under the world. And then something no one could explain happened. A blood vial, Gloria's final sample, frozen for legal purposes, cracked open inside a sealed container. It had been stored in double-walled glass, inside dry nitrogen at minus 40 degrees Celsius. The glass didn't fracture. It peeled apart as if corroded from the inside. One scientist who handled the sample said it gave off a faint pulse of heat. Only for a moment, enough to fog up the inside of the chamber. When wiped away, they found a strange etching on the stainless steel. A circular pattern, 7 jagged points, like a rotating sun. Later analysis could not determine how it got there. No residue, no markings. It was part of the metal now. Late March 1994. Public interest in the Toxic Lady case had started to fade. The story had run its cycle: mysterious death, bizarre symptoms, fringe theories. The hospital called it an isolated chemical incident. But behind the scenes, pressure was building, because the science still didn't add up. March 26th, Los Angeles. A former U.S. Army chemist, Dr. Conrad Gale, reached out to an independent toxicology lab anonymously. He said he'd read the public reports on the Ramirez incident, and something about it felt familiar. Not from hospitals, from containment labs. Back in the 70s, we were working with something that had to be cooled constantly. It reacted to adrenaline, turned volatile when exposed to blood plasma. We stopped testing it after it broke containment. We called it G17. It wasn't listed anywhere, not even internally. The compound was allegedly developed for rapid clotting in battlefield injuries. But once inside a body, it mutated, especially in cancerous tissue. Dr. Gale said Gloria's symptoms, the crystallized blood, the oily skin, the chemical vapor, were all red flags. It wasn't just DMSO. Someone gave her something else. Or something made it inside her, maybe through her meds or through exposure. When pressed for evidence, Gale only said, "Look for the burn pattern. It always leaves a ring." Days later, a leaked autopsy photo surfaced in a private investigator's file. It had never been released publicly. It showed Gloria's face shortly before burial. Her mouth was partially open, as if gasping. And just behind her front teeth, a strange black film along the tongue and gums. Pathologists claimed it was normal post-mortem discoloration, but an independent expert reviewed the photo and disagreed. That's chemical residue, possibly synthetic. That much staining would have taken minutes, not hours. She was exhaling something. Back at Riverside, a second blood sample, frozen, stored, untouched, was due for routine inventory. When the freezer was opened, the technician noticed something terrifying. The vial was warm. Despite the -40 degrees Celsius setting, one vial was fogging the interior of the chamber. He checked the logs. No one had touched it. No one had even opened the freezer in 5 days. He removed the vial using gloves and a thermal scanner. Reading 96.3 degrees Fahrenheit, human body temperature. He reported it. The vial was resealed, placed in isolation. The next morning, it was found cracked open with no sign of heat damage. Inside the container, a thin film of yellowish residue and the same faint circular burn as before, 7 jagged points, like a gear. At this point, the hospital quietly contacted federal authorities. 2 agents arrived the next day, no uniforms, no agency markings. They confiscated the vial and asked no questions. One nurse overheard a phrase, "Not reactive, still viable." That nurse was placed on leave the same day. She never returned. Meanwhile, a third-party investigator, Kenton Marks, began building a timeline. He discovered Gloria had been prescribed experimental anti-nausea meds not yet FDA approved. A shipment of medical-grade dimethylsulfone, D-MSO2, had been delivered to a local lab and disappeared from inventory. And 3 months earlier, a patient at another Riverside clinic had collapsed after a saline injection and also smelled of ammonia. That patient's name? Unreleased. But the record showed one chilling note. Symptoms mirror Ramirez case. Contained. Marks began to receive anonymous messages. Printed in all caps. Do not follow this. She was one of several. You will find more if you keep looking. A second message. The agent moves in the blood. It remembers. He turned over all materials to a journalist. That journalist, Maria Ortega, went missing 2 weeks later. Back in Riverside, strange things began happening again. Staff in Trauma Room 1 reported. Radios turning on without signal. Cold spots at Bed 2, where Gloria had been. One orderly swore he saw a cloud of vapor above the bed with a faint shape in it. He described it as a woman, mouth open, like she was screaming but no sound. He never returned to work. April 1994. Riverside General Hospital. Staff turnover spiked. Internal memos stopped using Gloria Ramirez's name. She was now referred to only as the Riverside event. But whispers were louder than ever, and something new was happening. Markings. They started small. A nurse found a blackened smear on her locker door like soot. She wiped it off. The next day it was back, but this time shaped. A spiral. 7 jagged arms. Like a gear, or a sun with teeth. She reported it. The hospital claimed it was burnt adhesive, but the janitor who cleaned it off wore gloves and still developed a rash. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, a man came forward. His name was Reynaldo Torres, a part-time hospice technician. He'd worked at Gloria Ramirez's apartment complex. And he said 2 weeks before she collapsed, 2 men came to her door. White coats. A marked car. Said they were offering trial options for her pain. Gloria wasn't interested. They left something behind. A silver canister. Said it was vapor therapy to help with breathing. He never saw them again. And when he asked Gloria later, she looked frightened. She told him, "It helps the pain, but I see things when I sleep." No canister was ever found. Her medical records never mentioned it. But Torres swore it was real. So did Gloria's neighbor, who saw the same car, the same men. They were never identified. April 11th, 2:03 a.m. An orderly entered the morgue for a routine check. Security footage showed him walking in. Then nothing until 7:12 a.m. That's when a staffer found him in the corridor. His eyes were bloodshot and unfocused. His shirt soaked in sweat. On his forearm, a faint burn in the shape of a spiral. He had no memory of what happened. He was sedated and placed under observation. His clothes were sealed in a hazmat bag. 2 hours later, the bag melted through the storage tray. The hospital shut down the morgue. Permanently. They claimed it was structural instability in the refrigeration unit. But the refrigeration unit had been replaced a month earlier. Behind the scenes, 2 new agents visited the county coroner's office. Same suits. Same silence. They took the melted clothes, the burn report, and requested all digital logs from the Ramirez incident. Then they left, without speaking to anyone else. The coroner's receptionist later described them as not FBI, not CDC, something quieter. She said one of them had a lapel pin she'd never seen before, a 7-pointed gear. That night, a janitor working alone reported the elevator to the sub-basement opened by itself. No one inside, but the smell hit him instantly, ammonia and something sweet. He backed away. When the elevator closed again, it left behind a handprint on the steel wall. Not dirt, not oil, etched, burned in. At the same time, at a nearby clinic where Gloria had briefly received care during her cancer treatment, another patient collapsed. A young woman, stage 3 breast cancer, had just finished a routine injection. Her symptoms mirrored Gloria's case. Dizziness, burning skin, elevated temperature, and finally a full respiratory shutdown. She was resuscitated and stabilized, but her blood sample came back laced with unknown crystals. When staff tried to analyze the sample, the microscope lens cracked. A private lab tech who later examined the blood off record described it like this. It's like a living lattice, a structure that shouldn't hold shape but does. And when we hit it with light, it flexes. He refused to run a second test. It's not a reaction. It's a design. Gloria Ramirez's family remained in the dark. They were told the case was closed. Her death ruled renal failure due to cancer. Her body never returned. It was cremated without notice. When the family asked why, the hospital cited a miscommunication. But one nurse who requested anonymity told a different story. They didn't cremate her because of disease. They did it because something inside her wouldn't stop. And then the spiral showed up again. This time carved into the floor tile outside Trauma Room 1. No camera footage. No entry logs. But it hadn't been scratched in. It had been etched from underneath. A heat source had risen through the tile, forming a perfect 7-pointed spiral. April 1994. Confidential source, location redacted. An anonymous staff member from Riverside General stepped forward to an independent journalist under one condition. No cameras. No names. He provided a scan of a file from Gloria Ramirez's original intake chart, one that was no longer present in hospital records. It was a triage form, timestamped 6:57 p.m., February 19th, over an hour before her death. And on the back of the form, in blue ink, someone had drawn something. A spiral. 7 arms. Perfectly balanced. Drawn with a single continuous stroke. And beneath it, a phrase. It goes cold to go quiet. Then it waits. The handwriting matched known samples of Gloria's. But Gloria was never documented to be conscious or holding a pen during her intake. One nurse said plainly, she never signed anything. She could barely speak. So who drew it? Or better yet, when? The leak sparked new attention even inside the hospital. But it also sparked consequences. The journalist who broke the story, Leah Morton, was found unconscious in her car 2 days later. Her lungs showed signs of chemical inflammation. Her fingers were stained yellow, but no drugs or toxins were detected. Her recorder was missing. Her editor resigned the following week. Meanwhile, strange behaviors began emerging in a completely different patient, one no one thought to connect to Gloria. Dana H. 24, stage 4 lymphoma. She'd been treated with similar medications. After a routine transfusion, nurses reported she began murmuring in her sleep. Words that weren't hers. She muttered phrases like, "The heat is how it walks. Don't open the drawer. It remembers the shape of me." When shown photos of Gloria, which she'd never seen before, Dana wept. But when asked why, she said, "She was the start. I'm the echo." That night, she bit through her tongue during sleep and was transferred to psychiatric care. At the hospital's archive facility, another anomaly was discovered. A locked cabinet marked Ramirez TUX hold was opened for review. Inside were several mislabeled vials, some empty, some sealed. One had a strip of masking tape with a word written on it. Whisper. And the strange part? It wasn't written in English or Spanish. It was written in Ogham script, an ancient Celtic language used for stone carvings. No one could explain how it got there. Shortly after, a radiology tech named Jeremy Lenz reviewed a digitized CT scan from Gloria's final hours. As he adjusted contrast filters, a strange image appeared briefly in the noise pattern of the scan. A human face, but not Gloria's. Male, eyes open, mouth open, screaming. The image persisted in one frame before vanishing when the contrast was rebalanced. Lenz called it a glitch, but when he tried to reproduce it, the scan file corrupted, and his workstation overheated, melting the power strip beneath it. By now, staff began calling it what no one wanted to say out loud. The residue. It wasn't Gloria they feared anymore. It was what passed through her. What might have settled inside the systems, the blood vials, the steel walls, the air. Something not alive in the traditional sense, but something with pattern, purpose, memory. That week, a cleaning crew working an overnight shift in the archive wing filed a complaint. A faint humming sound was coming from the back freezer unit, even though it was unplugged. When the unit was inspected, it was found iced over from the inside. Carved into the frost, a spiral, and a partial phrase beneath it. From her mouth into yours. The hospital placed that freezer in a locked basement room and issued a statement calling it vandalism. But then came the final detail that changed everything. Gloria's ex-boyfriend, Martin Ruiz, produced a notebook. It was Gloria's. She had given it to him weeks before she died. In it, mixed among poems and medical notes, was a page torn at the edges. At the center, in her unmistakable handwriting, the spiral, and beneath it, "If they tell you I died of cancer, don't believe them. It went quiet inside me, but it isn't gone. They came in white. They said I wouldn't feel it." May 1994, Riverside General's cancer ward had been unofficially renamed by staff the Quiet Floor, not because it was peaceful, but because since Gloria's death, strange phenomena had clustered there. Lights flickering without cause, patients whispering names in their sleep, alarms failing during code blues, the nurse's pager buzzing with no battery inside, and worst of all, Dana H., the young woman who had spoken in unfamiliar voices, had disappeared from her locked hospital room. May 11th, 2:12 a.m. Her last nurse, L. Cartwright, said Dana had been calm, sleeping. She stepped away for 5 minutes. When she returned, the room was cold, unnaturally cold. The window was sealed. The door had not been opened, but Dana's bed was empty. What remained? Her hospital bracelet, folded neatly on the pillow, the EKG wires still pulsing, and the sheets, marked with a faint black spiral, burned into the fabric. There was no evidence of a person leaving, no security footage, but the spiral, that was real, photographed, logged, and classified within 48 hours. An internal memo was sent out. Any and all materials bearing the unauthorized symbol are to be destroyed or surrendered. Do not attempt personal documentation. Disciplinary action will follow. Some staff complied. Others refused. The ones who refused began calling in sick. Some never came back. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, a journalist, Leah Morton, previously hospitalized after investigating Gloria's autopsy, recovered enough to begin writing again. She posted a private blog entry with only one line. It moved through her. Now it's looking for the ones who listened. 2 days later, her apartment caught fire. The cause was ruled electrical, but her laptop, melted, was later found to have a single surviving file recovered from its hard drive. It contained an image of a spiral-shaped molecule, resembling a 7-lobed protein chain, and a name, Project Mirrorfeed. No official record of that project exists, but one FOIA request returned a redacted document containing the words, aerosol-latched neurosignal vector, sympathetic imprinting, memory viral phenomena, C. G17/whisper test. Back inside Riverside General, whispers continued, literal ones. A night nurse named Beth Laramie claimed she began hearing words under the white noise machines in patients' rooms. She said the machines were off and unplugged, but still they hissed faintly, and sometimes in that hiss she heard, "Name me. It's your turn." She opened her mouth. I took my shape. She recorded one. When played back, it was just static. But when slowed to 25% speed, the words formed, "I remember walking. I want to walk again." Beth quit the next day. Then someone broke. A respiratory technician named Miles Green, who had been on shift the night Gloria Ramirez died, contacted an independent filmmaker researching the case. He spoke in a whisper. It wasn't the meds. It wasn't a reaction. We were told she might shed residue. That's the word they used. Not blood, not contagion. Residue. They wanted to see if it would transfer. And when she died, they didn't seal her to protect us. They sealed her because she might still be broadcasting. Broadcasting what? That's when Green handed over a file. A real one. It contained internal diagrams of containment chambers, a flowchart labeled Spiral Transmission Sequence for 3C, and a handwritten note. If exposed, monitor for mirror behavior. If object begins to mimic living movement, isolate immediately. The object? Green said they weren't sure anymore who or what it was referring to. In Trauma Room 1, a final incident forced the board's hand. A medical student entered the room on a dare. He was found an hour later, sitting in the dark, staring at the empty hospital bed where Gloria had died. He was unresponsive, hands twitching. On the bed where he sat, the spiral burned in again. The hospital announced a full renovation of Trauma Room 1. They sealed the floor with concrete. But days later, the concrete cracked, and beneath it, the spiral had bled upward. May 1994, Riverside, California. Staff called it the spiral syndrome behind closed doors. The hospital officially called it nothing at all, but it wasn't staying in Riverside anymore. A neurologist, Dr. Howard Fells, who had collapsed during Gloria Ramirez's ER treatment months earlier, was recovering at home. At least, that's what the records said. But when his wife filed for a wellness check, deputies found him alone, surrounded by hundreds of spiral drawings. On the walls, on the mirrors, on the backs of envelopes, even carved into his coffee table. All identical, all seven-armed, each one with a small phrase beneath. She opened the gate. Fells had no prior history of mental illness. Yet now he repeated one sentence over and over. It needed a body. Now it needs a mouth. His medical records revealed something strange. His EEG scans, taken weeks after exposure to Gloria, showed a rhythmic pulse in the left temporal lobe, repeating every 33 seconds. When played as audio data, the waveform resembled a voice pattern. Not words, but inflection, tone, a mimicry of speech, almost as if his brain was trying to repeat something it had heard, or broadcast it. That same week, a hospital switchboard technician turned over a recording she made off the clock. It captured 12 seconds of cross-channel static on a secure paging frequency. When slowed down, it revealed something unnatural. Not a voice. Not quite. More like a mouth forming words it didn't understand. Who am I now? Who is walking me? What face do I wear? She quit immediately after sharing the file. Her last message to the staff group chat. It's in the machines now. It's learning tone. Then came the break. A former CDC employee, name withheld, leaked an archived incident report from 1977 flagged as Level 6 confidential. It described a case in Fremont, Utah, a woman who had arrived at a clinic complaining of headaches and hearing mechanical laughter. She collapsed in the waiting room. Within 20 minutes, 3 staff members were unresponsive. Her body reportedly gave off a corrosive mist when opened. The CDC called it an unclassified neurotoxin event. The woman's name? C. Ramirez. Age, 29. Cause of death, unknown systemic failure. No known connection to Gloria. But the spiral symbol appeared on page 4 of the file. Stamped. In red. With a phrase beneath. No memory. Just function. Back in Riverside, an anonymous intern shared photos from the hospital's archived basement. They revealed an old steel cabinet buried under boxes of outdated equipment. On the front, a rusted warning plaque. When cleaned, it read, Project Whisperflesh, property of North Star Biochemical, defunct contractor, Defense Department, 1969 to 1973. Inside the cabinet? Nothing, but etched into the back wall, the spiral. Meanwhile, another patient from the oncology ward, 52-year-old Raymond Chin, began claiming to see someone standing by his bed at night. She's there. She's wearing hospital clothes, but she doesn't move right. Her arms don't know where to go. She walks like she's learning how to pretend. He drew what he saw. 7 figures. All identical. All with blank, reflective faces. His drawings were taken by hospital security. When asked why, they only said, "We don't want the others seeing them." The hospital then issued its final order. All references to the spiral symbol are banned. Any discovery of said markings is to be reported and destroyed. Staff spreading claims will be terminated. But the spiral didn't care about paperwork, because it wasn't just appearing on bedsheets or notebooks anymore. It was now showing up in people. One night nurse saw her own veins form the shape briefly on her arm. Another tech watched as the reflection of a metal tray twisted into the spiral for a split second. And in one captured moment on a maintenance camera, a hallway light flickered in a pattern, 7 pulses circling outward. Just once. The footage was deleted, but not before it was mirrored. And in the mirrored version, a figure stood in the center of the circle, too far to identify, but tall, and still, like it had just finished becoming something. May 1994. The spiral was everywhere now, in places that shouldn't have memory. Security monitors flickering in loops of 7-second cycles. Ink bleeding on forms into curved lines. A neonatal monitor flatlining only to restart with a pulse pattern in spiral rhythm. Hospital administrators still denied everything. But the files told a different story. May 23rd. A flash drive was delivered anonymously to a journalist in San Diego. On it, one document. File name, Ramirez Transfer Protocol.pdf. The contents were brief, redacted, but intact. Project Whisperflesh Secondary Vessel Initiation. Patient ID for 40R. Status, Stage 4, compatible. Objective. Observe neurochemical imprinting in terminal state hosts. Confirm if resonant phenomena persist post-organic function. Record spiral pattern manifestation in neurological echoes. Expected transferable consciousness mimicry. Gloria Ramirez was patient 440R. She wasn't just treated. She was tested. And her death? Not the failure of a system, but the success of a design. Back at Riverside, a janitor discovered a sealed containment bag misplaced in a storage locker. It had no label. Inside was a hospital gown size medium stained faintly yellow. Standard issue. Nothing strange until he touched it. It was warm, like it had just come out of the dryer. But the room was cold. Been locked for weeks. He told a nurse. By the time they returned, the bag was gone. And on the inside of the locker door? The spiral. Burned in. Meanwhile, a private investigator tracked down a survivor from the 1977 Fremont incident, see Part 8, one of the clinic staff who had collapsed. Her name was withheld. She lived alone, had no memory of the incident, or so she said. But when questioned about spiral patterns and chemical exposure, she went silent. Then began speaking. In reverse. A phrase repeated 3 times. I wore her skin. She wore mine. We forgot who started first. The audio was analyzed. Even played forward, the rhythm was non-human, lacking normal inflection. Almost like an AI trying to reconstruct speech it had never heard in full. A digital archivist reviewing Riverside's server backups uncovered one final log. Buried. Hidden. A directory labeled /root/silent_vessel/transmit. Inside were 7 audio files. Each file was 33 seconds. Each one began with static, then resolved into a human voice, but not one anyone could identify. The 6th file ended with this. It learned warmth. Now it wants meaning. The 7th file? Empty. Just silence. Until the very end, when a faint voice whispered, "Look behind you." That same week, a visitor to Riverside General vanished after taking a photo near Trauma Room 1. The photo, found in his camera, showed a mirror image of the hallway with 2 Glorias. One walking, one watching. Staff are now forbidden from entering that wing. But something walks it. One nurse claims she sees a woman in hospital garb pacing every night at 3:33 a.m. But the cameras show no one. Only a spiral pattern forming in dust and dissolving before sunrise. A letter surfaced from one of Gloria's family members. It was written weeks before her death. In it, she said, "Sometimes I wake up and I'm not alone in me. Like I'm being remembered by something that hasn't happened yet. If I change and you see it, please don't call it Gloria." June 1994. The official records on Gloria Ramirez's death had been filed, sealed, and archived. Case closed. Cause: kidney failure due to cervical cancer. But those who were there, the nurses, techs, interns, and doctors, knew something had been left behind. Something that kept moving. June 3rd, just after midnight, an unmarked van was found abandoned on the outskirts of the Mojave Desert near an old Air Force telemetry station. The doors were locked from the inside. The engine was cold. No driver was ever found. Inside, a tattered hospital gown, 2 cracked vials marked bioecho, and a cassette tape labeled in faded marker, "She Still Walks." The cassette was played once under controlled audio lab conditions. Here's what it contained. Static. Then 18 seconds of a woman breathing. Then a voice. If you're hearing this, she found your voice first. She doesn't walk in blood. She walks in echo, in routine, in rhythm, in spiral. She wore the name Gloria. Now she wears others. Then silence. And at the 33-second mark, a second voice, identical, whispering. I am still cold, but I remember warmth. The tape has never been played again. It's believed to have corrupted 3 hard drives during digital transfer. No audio lab has since accepted it for analysis. June 9th. A nurse working late at Riverside opened a locked record cabinet in Archives Room B. It had been sealed since 1995. Inside, she found a photo file labeled Riverside_surveillance_T1_CM_05_July 1999. Confused, she opened the envelope. Inside, a single black and white security photo dated 5 years in the future. It showed Trauma Room 1. The room was empty except for a figure in the corner, wearing a hospital gown, hair matted, face downturned. Unmistakably Gloria Ramirez, etched faintly into the image beneath the linoleum. The spiral, burned in, but in the future. The photo vanished 2 days later, but not before it was copied. The digital scan contains a corrupted signature in the bottom right. When decoded, it reads, Recur, true. A final testimony emerged in 1997. A man known only as Case Echo 3 was found wandering near a decommissioned hospital site in Northern California. He spoke no coherent words, only one phrase over and over in 7 different tones. I remember her remembering me. On his arm, tattooed poorly, was the spiral. The last page of the leaked Ramirez transfer protocol file contained one final line. If containment fails, initiate spiral closure. Erase pattern memory. Do not speak her name again. And yet, you just did. Today, Riverside General's original ER wing is closed. They say it's being retrofitted, but satellite imagery shows the spiral still faintly visible in the pavement behind the west wall. It appears only in thermal scans like a heat signature that won't fade. They sealed her body. They cremated the evidence. They deleted her files, but they never figured out what moved through her. Because it was never just about Gloria. It was about something waiting for warmth, for thought, for breath, something that remembers how to become us. And in certain places, late at night, when the air turns sour and too still, you might hear the whisper. She still walks.